So today we've got a very interesting topic to talk about when it comes to Payday 3 news, and it's this. Payday 3 leaving Xbox Game Pass on September 15th. I can't find the date for it anywhere on my actual Xbox, but insert screenshot here that shows the date that Payday 3 is leaving Game Pass on both Xbox and PC. So as of September 15th, the game will leave the service, the day before Fear and Greed drops. I alluded to it a bit in yesterday's video, but as I said in that, I wanted to make a proper video talking about this because I have a few ideas as to why it might have happened, whether it's actually going to happen, and what it means for the future of the game. So let's talk a bit about this Game Pass decision. As a lot of you know, Payday 3 has been on Game Pass since it first came out. It was a day one Game Pass release on September 21st, 2023. It came out for everyone, and Game Pass players could get in at no additional price as long as you were on that subscription service. And as is custom with Xbox Game Pass, you can buy DLC for the game if you wish. You have access to the base game, and you can then buy the DLC to support that if you want access to more content in the game. For example, I did that with Starfield. I didn't buy the base game because it was included with Game Pass, but with me being quite excited for that game in the lead up to it, I bought the deluxe upgrade to get early access, get a few extra bits here and there, get the season pass. I thought I'll probably get my time out of this, so I will do it. If I found out Starfield's base game was being taken off Game Pass, I'd be a little bit annoyed. Difference with that one though is that's a first party title. Bethesda is an Xbox studio, so that's probably not going to happen. Whereas Payday 3 is not a first party title. It is a title that's been provided by Starbreeze and Plaion that Microsoft have paid them to put on the service. Microsoft, from what I can see in my research I've done into Game Pass, pays studios or publishers to put their games on the subscription service, and then Microsoft earns that money back through Game Pass subscriptions. And so however that deal ended up coming about, Microsoft have given that money to Starbreeze and or Plaion and said, hey, put Payday 3 on our service and you'll get a lot more players and we'll both be happy. But of course now, 1 year later, that's all changing. But as always, if I can just ask very quickly if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the channel, whether you're new or keep coming back, I'd really appreciate you on board in this community as we talk about all things Payday 3 and beyond. Let's talk first off about whether it's actually going to happen, because I'm seeing a lot of people suggest that it might actually not go through and that it may not leave Game Pass on September 15th, and I'm going to be completely honest with you, if it wasn't going to leave the service, we wouldn't know it was leaving to begin with. Since Game Pass was formulated, I've been an Xbox predominant player, and I don't think I've ever seen a game be announced to be leaving Game Pass that then didn't actually leave Game Pass. Every time it's said, it does happen. However, games do come back. That is known to happen. GTA 5, I think, has been on Game Pass 2 or 3 times at least. It's left and come back. That is something the games can do. So just because it's going to leave the game service on September 15th doesn't mean it can't necessarily come back down the line. But I do think people saying, oh, maybe it won't go through, unfortunately, I think you're wrong. If I get proven wrong, fair enough, but I genuinely cannot remember ever seeing a game getting walked back from being taken off the service without actually being removed at some point. But I also want to talk a bit about the why and why this decision has come to be. I see 2 possible options. Option 1 is that Starbreeze or Plaion have decided to pull the game from the service. Maybe their plan is to try and get more people to buy the base game who were on Xbox playing through Game Pass, or on PC if you were playing through PC Game Pass and didn't own the game on Steam. Maybe they're hoping taking it off Game Pass will boost those sales. Maybe they've looked at the game and said, hey, maybe we can stand it on our own 2 feet now. We've had a lot of improvements with Operation Medic Bag. Maybe people will actually buy the game if we take it off Game Pass. There'll be people like I mentioned earlier who bought the DLC for Payday 3 and therefore now can't access it and will feel obligated to buy the base game. So maybe that will be how it plays out. Or there's another option, which is that Microsoft, who, as I've said, based on my research, are the ones who pay to put games on the service, have decided not to pay Starbreeze or Plaion for another year. It could be that too. It could be Microsoft have looked at the performance of Payday 3, the reception that it's had, and gone, do you know what? This isn't worth our funding anymore, and have pulled the plug. Of course, if Microsoft had pulled the plug, that would make it less likely for Payday 3 to return to Game Pass at a later time, but we don't know, so I wouldn't want to speculate too much beyond that. Those are just the 2 options that I think are most likely. Either Starbreeze and Plaion are taking a tactical risk, or Microsoft have decided it's not worth their time. If it is Starbreeze and Plaion, that is one hell of a gambit to try and risk. They're hoping that people will still play the game once it's taken off the service, and I don't know whether everyone will bite on that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how that gets responded to and how many people pick up the game as a result of it leaving the service. But the other thing that's important to talk about is why it's bad to do it now of all times, why this is the worst timing to take the game off of Game Pass. Even if there are some people who will buy the game, yeah, fair enough, it still feels like terribly bad timing. As I said earlier, Fear and Greed releases on September 16th, and Payday 3 leaves Game Pass on September 15th, which means that people who have bought the Gold Pass for Payday 3 on Xbox or PC won't be able to play the DLC they've paid paid for if they don't fork up for the base game. That means a quarter of the DLC they've paid for will no longer be accessible to them unless they spend extra money to get access to the base version of the game. Regardless of who made the decision or whether it was intentional or not, that is a hideous case of absolutely terrible timing, especially for a game that has been trying so hard for the last 12 months to get back in people's good graces. I can't personally blame you as a player if you feel robbed because you can't get access to some of the DLC content now the game's been taken off Game Pass, because you don't plan for these games to be removed. It can happen, especially with, as I've said, these third-party titles, but that doesn't make it sting any less when the content you've paid for you're not going to be able to play. While it's not quite as severe as this example I'm about to give, it does feel reminiscent of Overkill's The Walking Dead, where there was a deluxe edition for that game and people weren't able to get access to all the content because Skybound pulled the plug before Starbreeze could release it. Different circumstances and different situation, and in that game you genuinely had no way to get hold of it. Here you do if you buy the core game once you've got off Game Pass. But it's a similar situation where people have paid up front expecting to get certain content and then it's taken away from them in one shape or another. And that really sucks. There's no getting around that. And so you have to ask yourself one of two questions depending on who made the call. If it was Starbreeze or Plow's call, is this a risk worth taking? And if it was Microsoft's call, is this going to be a detriment to Payday 3? Is this going to cause a problem for the game? I can give a similar answer to both of those questions, and realistically, I just think it's too risky to be making this move now. The wider public reception to Payday 3 is still healing, the game that failed so badly on launch and has been slowly trying to claw its way back, and even had 6 straight months without a new heist releasing. It's not exactly had the best first year of content, so to then have this really rub the salt in the wound, it's just not good. It's not good at all. So I put a poll out on YouTube to see what people thought about the Game Pass change and whether they would end up buying the game now it's being taken off Game Pass. At the time of recording, there's been 1,500 votes, and about 2/3 have said they just want to see the results, so people, presumably, who own the game on Xbox or own it on a different platform. But out of the people who actually voted for one of the top 2 results, it was almost completely 50-50 split between people who would buy the game with it taken off Game Pass and people who wouldn't. But it was slightly more tilted in not buying the game. If we roughly extrapolate that to the amount of Game Pass users playing the game, that means about half the people who play this game on Game Pass won't now buy the game with it being taken off of it. Half the people have decided it's not worth their money. That could be wildly inaccurate. There could be far less people, there could be far more people, but it's an interesting metric nonetheless. The other thing to bear in mind is that Xbox wasn't necessarily the biggest platform for Payday 3 anyway. In one of Starbreeze's past company reports, I can't remember which one it was, so forgive me for not knowing the date, but it was noted that PlayStation was doing surprisingly well for Payday 3, and that isn't available on a subscription service. It was just PS5 players who were picking the game up. So maybe Payday 3 losing its position on Xbox Game Pass isn't quite as bad as you might think it is. We don't know. It's all very much up in the air, and all I can really do is speculate based on the knowledge that I have and the theories that I have. And overall, I still do have this feeling that it just isn't a good idea. For the long-term health of Payday 3, it should have stayed on Game Pass. I don't think any status quos like that being changed doesn't help out the situation it's in and has been slowly trying to claw its way out of for the last 12 months. I just don't think there's any real benefit to how that's going down, and it's a shame. So of course, with all this in mind, the biggest question to answer now is, should you buy Payday 3? If you're one of those people who's got Payday 3 on Xbox Game Pass and you're not sure if it's worth putting that £30 or $40 or whatever the discounted price is into the game, should you buy the game? Personally, I really don't know how I'd answer that question because it's very much a case-by-case basis. You have the argument that people have already paid up front for the content and so they feel obligated to buy the base game so they can make the most of that content, and fair enough. But there's also people who might feel like it's a sunk cost fallacy, that they've paid for this DLC content, but they're gonna have to pay a lot more than the base price of that DLC chapter just to get back into the game to try it out. So realistically, what I would say is wait. Wait until you've seen people review it, seen people talk about it on stream, play it unedited, whether it's my streams or any other Payday creator. Wait and see what it's like. And then you can make a judgment overall. It's very much a case-by-case basis, and so I can't really make the decision for you. That's down to you to decide. Unfortunately, I think it's just a case of it being terrible timing, and I do fear for the future of this game with less people playing it, especially since player numbers are something people worry about so much as it is. I do think people over-worry about it. You know, we've talked about this before, but Steam charts are not the only way to judge player counts. You've got console, and you can't necessarily predict console counts based on Steam. However, anything that can damage the game when it hasn't got as much attention as we know, because especially when you compare the figures between Payday 2 on PC and Payday 3 on PC, you know that love and attention just isn't there as much for Payday 3 as it is, so the last thing you need is to reduce its audience. So granted, we've got content coming until March, we know this already, but with the roadmap not showing us anything past October, and now a good chunk of the Xbox player base not being able to access the game unless they pay more to get back in, it's just a bit of a rough time for a third of the player base, and generally for the Payday community as a whole. Payday 3's never really had it easy, and I don't see why it's going to change now, because there's always something, unfortunately, with this game. That's just the way it is, it feels like, at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. The biggest thing now to wait for is what Fear and Greed is going to turn out to be when it comes out on September 16th. That was terrible English, but you get my point. We'll see what that DLC chapter is like when it releases, and if it's really good, maybe it'll give us a very good close off to year 1 of Payday 3. Who knows? Boys in Blue and Houston Breakout have been genuine big improvements for this game. How much of an improvement is a subjective opinion, for sure, but we've definitely been on an upward trend. It's just an argument of how much of an upward trend and if it's been quick enough. That's down to you and how you feel. I personally have thoughts in either direction on that debate, but we'll just have to wait and see. So either way, I'm going to wrap this video up here. Thank you all very much for watching this discussion about Xbox Game Pass and Payday 3. Let me know what you think about the system losing Payday 3 in 2 weeks' time down in the comment section below, and whether you, as a player, will actually buy it. Why is no one coming to revive me? AI! Man, come on. What is happening over there? Okay, it's clear that this heist is going to fail, so that's a good note to end on. But either way, let me know what you think of the Xbox Game Pass decision in the comment section below. I'll be back, no doubt, on Friday with a new devlog video. So until then, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Take care.